knew what it was. I knew what it was. All right, guys, I'm sorry. I was so pissed at myself. I was terribly frustrated. I was almost positive going to the track that I was gonna run way faster than I did, especially with practicing, and I thought I got all the clutch issues dialed in, and that was all incorrect. So it is what it is. We make some adjustments and you move forward. I'm not bummed on it at all. I know I'm just gonna make moves again. So a couple of things that I want to address though, which a lot of people comment. Yes, I know automatics are faster. That's a given. I don't care. I'm not gonna go automatic. I like street driving my car. That's why both of my cars are stick shift. Now, if I wanted to build a drag only car, it would be an automatic, but for now, I'm just enjoying the ride. It came to my attention. I thought I could get away with a radial, and that's not really the truth. The radial was not working. For me, I was either blowing the tires off or bogging because I couldn't figure out what RPM the car liked. So it was a weird thing. I didn't really understand exactly what I was doing wrong. Lastly, I definitely had some sort of air bubbles in the clutch. This morning, what I did again, I re-bled the clutch. And I did it about 3 or 4 times just to make sure all the air was out of it, and then I went and drove the car. Tomorrow I'm gonna get back into it and drive it some more and do some more practice. But I re-bled the clutch, made sure all the air was out of it, and made sure it drove the way it's supposed to. As you guys seen in one of the clips, when I was going to launch, it's about 4,500 RPMs and the car started to move forward, so that shows me that the clutch was engaging a little bit and that it had some sort of air in the slave. So I re-bled it. Hopefully that solves the issue. I kind of tested that out this morning. I didn't have any of those issues this morning, but yeah, so hopefully that's figured out. Now lastly, I believe on the coilover setup, from looking at a few of other people's setups, some people use drag back, some people use coilovers or drag racing coilovers, and the spring rates are pretty stiff. So what was happening on my set was I have an 8K rear spring and I didn't have the dampening hard enough, so the car was squat and then bounce and squat again. So if I do go again on Wednesday, I actually am gonna just leave it idle or 1,000 RPMs and ease into the gas and go from there, and just work on my driving that way and not necessarily work on launching the car.
Jeez.
I got dizzy. Almost crashed. We had a nice little getaway. I rode the dirt jumps, rode the skate park yesterday. Now we are heading up to Winter Park to set up for some BMX shows. So look at my hot Latina right here. Woo-wee. Psyched every time I see you.
Oh, you're so sweet. I love you.
Today, just riding my bike, having a good time with the team, and then we'll get back to doing some car stuff. Welcome back. This is some real life stuff happening right here. My wife's water pump went out. I'm fixing it, but it's not just a water pump swap because that would just be too easy. What it is I got to do the timing belt and all of it in order to get her back on the road. So I took her to work this morning and now I'm here working on this water pump. So this first year of drag racing has came with plenty of mistakes. If you guys have been following me for some time, you guys know that I had never planned on racing the GTO whatsoever. It was originally just supposed to be a really fun street car, which it is, and then I took it to the track and then all of a sudden, yeah, I'm racing it pretty consistently. I found out having a street car and drag racing that street car doesn't necessarily work. So first time I went, I was on a LS7 clutch, I was on street tires and stock axles and my LSA setup. It's a real basic LSA setup. It's not like some of you guys who have them at sea level or whatever. It's a 300 pump, it's 65 pound injectors, and it makes 630 corrected. So 630 horsepower corrected for altitude, or for SAE, which is roughly at altitude about 528, 530 or so. The car was also on coilovers, K-Sport coilovers. I'm still running those there, and I love them, to be honest. I really like how the car drives on the street, but I quickly found out for the quarter mile I had my suspension set up completely wrong. Fast forward like 2 months or so. So go to the track, ran a really terrible time. Shifted just fine. I went through the gears, shifted just fine, and at this point, you know, the car ran great. There was no real issues with the car. Just, you know, I was on street tires, stock axles, LS7 clutch, so everything I was really used to the car and how it drove at that point. So fast forward a month, pretty much I add in drag radials. Drag radials changed a lot for how the car drove because now shifting the car was a little bit different because I had a lot of grip, and grip was awesome, but with grip I wasn't able to launch the car because I couldn't figure out the happy spot where there's either too much RPM or not enough RPM. So I go to the track a few times on this setup with the drag radials, still stock axles, still LS7 clutch, and after a few passes the clutch starts slipping, which I had planned on. And I still couldn't really figure out the slip of the clutch just right. And all of this is due just to inexperience, whereas I was used to driving the car real good on my setup on the street. And then as soon as I switched to the drag radials, I was actually going to the track pretty consistently. The wife is gonna join me. What's up, puppy? What's up, puppy? Hello. He's going nuts. He's going nuts. And in comes the beautiful wifey.
Don't, I just washed my face and stuff, so it's red.
I'm telling them about my issues racing the car and transitioning from a street car to drag racing the GTO, so yeah, kind of going through all of my BS. Now I did an event where I was roll racing on the drag radials, and actually the car, you know, from a 20 roll went 100 and just about 123 miles an hour in the quarter mile from one of the roll races. And then from my understanding, if you're doing either the 20 or 40 rolls, your trap speed should be very much the same as your quarter mile. So what that tells me is, you know, it's a possible 10-second car. Look at this fool. It's a possible 10-second car, and then it's also, I mean, it's a possible 10-second car if I drive it to 10 seconds, but for sure it's an 11-second car at my elevation. Added an ice tank, added a new clutch, added axles. One, I was afraid of blowing out an axle and getting stranded at the track, and I wanted to drive it for what it's worth. That was number one, and thanks to this one, she made me send it. The ice tank was because I was having pretty high IATs after I finished the run at the track, and it was taking quite a bit of time for the car to cool back down IAT wise, so I added ice tank. Clutch was because I was pretty much slipping on the old LS7 clutch. I had that LS7 clutch in there for 20,000 miles or so since I first did the supercharger setup, and it lasted real good, but it started slipping, so I decided to go new clutch. Which brings us to today. My wife encouraging me not to get so upset because I freak out when I have a hard time with stuff.
He really does.
No, in all honesty, for all the research and all the reading I do and everything, I just hate when I underperform, even though I try to practice and do all this stuff. So, as anybody who wants to be good or great at something, it's very annoying. It's hard to just enjoy the journey. So, that is what is the deal. Like I'm learning the car all over again. The car feels way fast. I mean, it's pretty quick. I just haven't been able to drive it that fast. So I have learned that, number one, my spring rate is still a little bit too low on the coilovers. And I don't know that I really want to change out the coilovers because on the street it drives so good. So spring rate and dampening need to be better for the GTO. You don't want any squat, and I get a lot of squat. And then also the rear end unloads after I take it out of gear. So lots of little quirks to figure out on the GTO. I had a lot of air in my clutch. So the first time I went to the track, I was fighting the clutch initially, and then also with the radials, I was blowing the radials like straight up burnout for a second. Like first gear was pointless again. It felt kind of like street tires. So I lowered the air pressure, and that helped a little bit, but it made it to where it was harder to launch the car. And from doing some more reading and talking to other people who are a lot more experienced than me in the drag racing field, radials are not necessarily the best thing to use for the GTO, especially stick shift. So I definitely need to look into doing some sort of bias ply slick, and that should help quite a bit, and be a little bit softer on my drivetrain. I don't want to blow out my diff or anything. For the next few weeks, pretty much what we're going to do is I'm going to take the GTO to the track a few more times, try to get my ETs better, my 60 foots better. I'm also going to look into higher spring rate rear spring and see if that helps at all. And pretty much just roll off the line every time now, instead of trying to do any kind of RPM launch until I get some sort of tire for it. But yeah, I definitely think I'd rather race the BMW, to be honest. It's a lighter car, I have a good platform for it, and it's a whole lot cheaper to modify. So that is most likely what's going to happen, is we're going to end up building the Beamer, and the Beamer is going to go way faster than the GTO, and the GTO is going to stay really nice and pretty. What you think, girl?
I think that's a plan. Especially because, like, we've never had this before. Like, it's never happened. So
yeah,
it's, like, nice, you know, to have that, like, option.
Yeah. So we've never had options before. And, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but I'm not competing in BMX anymore. I am just riding my bike and doing shows and just enjoying it for what it is. So I definitely would like to transfer some of my competitiveness to drag racing, but I have to get good first.
Let's not get ahead of him.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. He's already good. He just needs practice.
She thinks I'm good, but I'm not good.
I do.
I'm an amateur. I'm definitely amateur. I know a lot, but I haven't been able to translate those skills into physical driving yet. So
it's a whole nother thing, baby.
Yeah, I know.
You'll get there.
I know.
Okay. He's so like competitive and like always just want to be good. So
it is what it is.
But
yeah, it's hard. You know, it's hard especially if you're into it, like into whatever you're doing. It's hard to be bad. Like, it's hard to be a beginner. I'm not used to being a beginner at something. So, you know, I've been riding my BMX bike for close to 20 years now. It's insane. So I'm way past the beginner stage of that. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to get my feet wet. So, I love my GTO, and I definitely want to keep it more of a street car. So we got some plans for the Beamer. I ain't BSing this time. Remember that one time I said I was going to turbo it, and I didn't turbo it because I was trying to get used to it. So now I'm used to it. We're going to make moves,